It's a delight for me to greet you this morning. Thank God for another privilege of worship and having been sustained by God. We are tremendously blessed, and I thank God again for having this privilege to bring to you the gospel. So let me say good morning to Greater Galilee, and then that's my family, and then to say good morning to all of you who are viewing, and we thank God for you. Well, we want to get our Bibles, and we want to go on another Bible voyage. This morning we are treading the waters of pandemic proportion, and we want our gospel to be on purpose. We want it to be pointed because the times in which we are living in and the conditions under which we are living. So thank God for that. The book of Naaman, or rather the book of 2 Kings, story of Naaman, the fifth chapter of the book of 2 Kings. I want to read for you verses 1 through 4, then verse 14, verse 17. Now Naaman, captain of the host of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master and honorable, because by him the Lord had given deliverance unto Syria. He was also a mighty man of valor, but he was a leper. And the Syrians had gone out by companies and had brought away captivity out of the land of Israel a little maid. And she waited on Naaman's wife, and she said unto her mistress, Would God my Lord were with prophet that is in Samaria, for he would recover him of his leprosy. And one went in and told his Lord, saying, Thus and thus saith the man that is of the land of Israel. Verse number 14, Then went he down and dipped himself seven times in the Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God, and his flesh came again like unto the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. In verse 17, and Naaman said, Shall there not then, I pray thee, be given to thy servant two mules burden of earth? For thy servant will henceforth offer neither burnt offering nor sacrifice unto other gods, but unto the Lord. This message gives us insight what it means to have wise counsel from a strange source. It is wise counsel, but the source in which it comes from is a very strange and very unusual source. What we don't want to do, we don't want to make a mistake in this period that we're going through. We don't want to make a mistake, or the mistake, to feel as if, or to think as if, or to reason, rationalize as if God is somewhere vacating. He's somewhere making an effort to come up with a plan to do something about the conditions that the whole world faces. Brothers and sisters and my friend, God is front and center. And I said in one of my earlier messages is that God is always active in the events of human affairs. Matter of fact, all things consist by God. All things consist, which simply means that all things are working at God's own command. The book of Haggai, which is not our study, but it gives us some insight into how God is in control of all things at all times. Haggai is a post-exile prophet. In other words, he prophesied to Israel in the time which they had been released from Babylon by Darius, Persia by Darius. And so his prophecy is after the captivity and somehow after the bondage, the people under leadership that wasn't so good drifted off to sleep and refused for a period of some 13, 17 years, some scholars say. They refused to do any work on the temple. They had encountered probably threats from the enemies. They probably had personnel problems having come back. And they had some problems, but nonetheless, they stopped building the temple. And as a result of that, God shook them up. They were saying in chapter 1 of Haggai, they were saying, it is not time, this is what the people said, it is not time for us to build God a house. And yet they were building their own houses. And then God says, now I'm tell you what happened. See, all that stuff you lost, all that stuff that didn't come to pass, all your plans and whatever else. He said, I blew on that. He said, you got bags and they got holes in them, you know, and every time you take one step forward, you go 3 backwards. I'm the cause of that because you didn't build my house. And then he says about 4 times in those 2 chapters, about 36 verses, he says 4 times, consider your ways. Consider your ways. And this would be a good time for the Christian community from top down to consider her ways as it relates to God. That's not my sermon, but I want to introduce the sermon from that perspective because I don't want it to be said that God is not in charge of anything. And whereas the God that we believe, that we preach, he's in charge of everything, knowing our downsettings, our uprising, our thoughts, long before they are formed in our mind. In the text today, we find that God is using the Assyrian people because of a sustained period of disobedience by Israel, by Judah. So God used the Syrians, used them to as an arm of chastisement. Whenever Israel would disobey God, God used people who we considered non-believers, people who were vicious somewhat in all of their activity, but he used them as an arm of chastisement. I'm not saying that this is an arm of God's chastisement, but what I am saying is it sure is different from what we have been experiencing. You know, my being quiet about it does not deny the fact that God is still in control. So the Lord had given deliverance to Naaman. Verse 1, according to verse 1, you can see how God used the Syrian people. He had given, Naaman was the captain at large. Now Naaman, the captain of the host of the king of Syria. The hosts were the massive army, and Naaman was over the whole army. He was captain of all of the forces, the Marines, the Army, the Navy, Coast Guards, the Boy Scouts. Naaman was, whatever it was that was bearing arms and insignia as a banner, Naaman was over it. And he had been given deliverance by God. And that means that when they would come down from the north and they would go into Israel with raiding parties, and they would, even in Israel, God had given deliverance to Naaman. Secondly, the little maid who worked in Naaman's wife surrounding, doing her biddings. She was brought back as a maid by Naaman, about Naaman's raiding parties. He didn't necessarily have to be in it, but she was brought back. And you know how it is with the victors go the spoils. So when they raided wherever she came from, obviously somewhere around Samaria, because she knew about the prophet that we'll speak on a little bit later, in Samaria. When she was brought back, and she was to serve the wife of Naaman. She was, you can see that as a reference to the raiding parties in 6 and 23. And he prepared great provision for them, and when they had eaten and drunk, he sent them away, and they went to their masters. So the band of Syria came no more unto the land of Israel. That was under the direction of Elisha, the prophet, who we speak of here. So with the spoils, with the victory, comes the spoil. This little girl is an instrument of the victory that Naaman had effected in Israel and brought her back to Syria. So God used natural things and natural people. God don't always use spiritual things. And if God is sovereign, and we know that he is, and the earth is his and the fullness thereof, then God is in control. And he is doing as he pleased to do in the world today. Secondly, natural accomplishments, its victories, and its vulnerability. Natural accomplishment. You need to hear what I'm saying now. Always, not always, but in many instances have great victories. But natural accomplishment is always vulnerable. Always vulnerable. Oftentimes in the process of life, God permits men and nations, to make great accomplishment, to achieve much, to soar to great heights. They common grace, it is called, rain on the just as well as the unjust. Not divine grace, but common grace. God, just out of his benevolence, beneficence, he just blesses people. You don't have to serve him to know that you're a blessed. Houston is a place where you can look around and you can see some things and objects and places and lodgings that make you say, wow, how does all that happen? And that person never moves toward God in any way. Common grace it is. Look at Babel. Babel is a place where you can see what man can accomplish without God. I thought I was at church on Sunday morning. I was just fixing to say, call for a witness. If one gains the whole world without at the expense of their souls, I want to ask you, what is the accomplishment? If one gains everything that he or she set out to do, and they gain it, what is the accomplishment? Because if he gain the whole world and lose his soul, his accomplishments are their accomplishments are voided out. And so Babel is an example of what men can do without God. They were building a tower to reach unto heaven. And God said, let's go down here and let's see what they are doing. Naaman was great with his master. Text says so. He didn't have no relationship problem with his master. His master was the king of Syria. And he was great, had a great relationship between he and the king. He was a man of honor. Naaman had all kinds of medals, all kinds of plaques, and all kinds of statues and so forth. The Bible doesn't say that. This Mac Paul saying this. I'm just putting it in turn for it. To show that he was a man of honor. And I believe not only was he a man of honor as it relates to the king, but perhaps throughout the kingdom of Syria, he was a man of honor. Then he was not a chicken. He was not a man who operated in fear. His operation, his method of operation was succinct, deliberate, and intentional, and on purpose. In other words, when Naaman did something, he knew what he was doing. He was a man of valor. He was a great leader. And he did all of this being a leper and a Gentile. All of this that came to Naaman. He, at this point in his life, he could not call upon the name of the Lord. And yet God helped him. Because he was a leper and a Gentile. But that did not prevent God. I'm talking to somebody who got their head down this morning. Raise your head up. Whatever you are, wherever you are, it does not prevent God from helping you. It does not prevent God from helping you. An impressive resume if you want to talk about Naaman, talk about a man, if you're going to write about him, one of your plots or sub areas you would write about his impressive resume. He had an impressive resume. He had honor. He had the ear of the king at all times. He was a man who was brave. Naaman walked across the battalion yard. They said, there go Commander Naaman. Man, that man know how to fight a war. He know about strategies, and he know how, when he get after the enemy, he know how to put a chokehold on him. Impressive resume. And then not only was he an impressive resume, and I'm going to move on from Naaman, but he was an impressive man, as I have already forestated. But he had a deadly and debilitating condition that placed him, you need to hear what I'm saying now, that placed him in the throes of death. Leprosy had put a death grip on Naaman. Not in this Gentile land, but in Israel, the leper had to go beyond the gates and wait to die outside of the camp. But here, this man, all of his greatness, but he was in the throes of death. I've been to some other countries, and there's no place like America. There's no place like America. There are places that you can go, you can't get a fish sandwich at 11 o'clock at night. And there are places that you go that certain foods are not served, that we are so accustomed to here. America is a great place, and places that I've gone, people clamor to get to America. They call America in certain places the great big BX, which means, BX means that place, military term, means that you go there, you shop, get whatever you need is at the BX. Here he was, a great man, but he was in the throes of death. But the good news is, if you're there this morning, and perhaps I'm talking to some unbelieving friends, if you're there this morning, there is hope, because being in the throes of death always give way to divine intervention. That's what Grandmama means when she said, I once was lost, but now I'm found. Blind, but now I see. In Romans 3 is a very dark outlook. In Romans 3, third chapter of Romans is a very dark outlook. And not only is this a very dark outlook, but it's a very dark outlook for all of us. Let me turn there and let me read it. In Romans 3, 9 through 18, what then? Are we better than they? No, in no wise. For we have before proved, both Jew and Gentile, that they are all under sin, as it is written. This is a piece that stands here. There is none righteous, no, not one. There is none that understandeth. There is none that seek after God. They are all gone out of the way. They are altogether become unprofitable. There is none that doeth good, no, not one. Their throat is an open sepulchre, and their tongue they have used deceitful. And poison of asp is under their lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed innocent blood. Destruction and misery are in their way, and the way of peace have they not known? There is no fear of God before their eyes. What I just read is a resume. It's not a resume. It's the litany of what depravity has brought to all human beings, both Jew and Gentile, all guilty, not seeking God. Thank God that he called me, and I know he called you at home, long before you answered. Thank God that whereas you were not seeking him, but he sought you. He didn't have to look hard, because God knows where we are. Downsetting and uprising, thoughts that are far off. He knows all things. And so this is a dark outlook by anybody's estimation. But I don't hang around dark outlooks too long. I like to find cloud and sunshine. I like to find fresh and vibrant wind blowing. And all we have to do is look just a little bit further in that same 3rd chapter, verse 21 through 26. But now the righteousness of God without the law is manifested, being witnessed by the law and the prophet, even the righteousness of God, which is by faith of Jesus Christ, unto all and upon all them that believe. If there's any unbelievers this morning, that's why I want to come with you. If you can only believe. And somebody said, I can't do that, Pastor, Reverend, I can't do that. Let me tell you how you do that. You got to make up your mind that it got to be done, because a life and death matter. So it got to be done. You can't do it, so you got to believe that there is one, only one who can do it. And that is that you got to call upon the righteous one, who is the Lord Jesus Christ. For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. But here it is in verse 24. Being justified freely. That word freely in many instances, I'm not sure right here, but that word freely means that God justified us without a cause in us to be justified. There was nothing in us, Galilee, friends, all of us, there's nothing in us that called forth the justifying grace of God. Nothing in us can do that. God freely and deliberately and sovereignly did so. Being justified freely by his grace through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus. That's the shout. That's the victory shout. But Naaman, the text says, was a leper. He was a leper. The wisdom, thirdly, is the wisdom. We looked at what God used, how he used. We looked at natural accomplishment. And now I want to look at the wisdom, the counsel, and the source, which this impressive wisdom came from. 5:2. 5 and 2 of our text. And the Syrians had gone out by companies and brought away captives out of the land of Israel, a little maiden. And she waited on Naaman's wife, and she said unto her mistress, Would God, my Lord, even were with the prophet that is in Samaria, for he would recover him from his leprosy. And one went in and told his Lord, saying, Thus and thus said the maid that in the land of Israel. You can read the rest of that. As it is referred to in verse 2, is this young lady, nondescript, had been brought away as a captive out of Israel. Obviously, the Syrian raiding parties would come down and they would inflict the Israelites, for their disobedience, God permitted that. And then they would take some captive. She became a victim of the captive. Wasn't that she was guilty of anything, but she was guilty by association. That's one thing about the body of Christ. A lot of people, well, that doesn't involve me, include me. Yes, it is. You're part of the body of Christ. If you're part of a church and something happened, you're part of that. Nobody is exclusive from that. Nobody's exclusive. We're all a part. We're one body with many members. And so this little girl was brought from Israel. She is a picture, beloved, of the sovereign grace work of God. This little girl. Why you say that? She's a picture of God and sovereign grace, how God works in sovereign grace. Sovereign grace is independent of any support from anywhere at any time. Look at her. She has no support. Who's supporting her? She has no credentials. She has no possessions. She is disjointed. That goes the theory. Behind every person who accomplished, there's another person. There goes the theory. When God gets ready to do what God is going to do, God can bring you from nowhere and sit you up on somewhere and do whatever he wants to do. And nobody can stay his hand. Nobody. Man, if I was at home this morning, I'd be calling for a witness. She was disjointed. But I want to show you something in the text. She had a skill. It was quite minuscule. It wasn't, I doubt, very profitable, but she had a skill. Her skill is a skill that God gives to everybody who named the name of Christ. She was a servant to Naaman's wife. She was a servant. You've heard the saying, servant well done. Not Mac well done, but servant well done. She was a servant. 1 Corinthians 1:25 speaks to this issue. She had no support, no credentials, no possession. She was disjointed, but she was a servant. She was not connected to the process that went on in Naaman's house. She served the process. You don't have to give me no title. You don't have to give me no title. Just let me serve the process. Somebody needs some water, let me get it. Somebody needs their foot washed, let me wash it. Yeah? Somebody needs whatever they need. Just let me be a servant. Because of the foolishness of God is wiser than man. And the weakness of God is stronger than men. My brother and my sisters, God makes choices, Paul say, of foolish things. And he does this that he can confound the wise. I don't want to get too churchy, but I do want to say this. In the midst of this, this pariah that's on the land, I want to say this, is that it's going to be a wonder in heaven if we can anthropomorphize it to that extent. It's going to be a wonder in heaven. It's not going to be you wondering at nobody else. It'll be you wondering at yourself. How did I make it over? Well, I want to tell you, the only way you'll make it over is by the grace of God. Won't be by works. Won't be by hookups. By the grace of God. God chooses foolish things that he might confound the wise. He chooses weak things that the mighty may look and say, what is God doing? This is a good time in America. It's a good time for the gospel to be preached as it is. He used base thing. Base thing means low. I don't really want to get into that too deep this morning. He used low, but you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. That's you know about Mephibosheth down in Lodabar. You know that wasn't nothing but dance clubs and all that kind of stuff in Lodabar. You know what was in Lodabar. It wasn't no help or hope. It wasn't no enterprise in business. Everything in Lodabar was down. He used base things. Matter of fact, the name Mephibosheth means the despised thing. He used things that are despised. He used things which are not. You've been in that not group? You're coming up to somebody, you're not going to make it because your attitude is wrong. You've ever been in that not group? You're not going to do well because you don't like authority. You've been in that not group? You don't do nothing I say, so you're not going to succeed in your life. You ever been in that not group? God has a way of pulling us and lifting us out of the not group, shining us up and setting us up for his glory and for his honor. Oh, my brother, my sister. He does these things for a reason, that no flesh should glory in his presence. Strange counsel, strange wisdom. Solomon said, you can find it. James says, if you have a need for it, ask God. God will give it to you. If you like wisdom, ask God. He will give you wisdom. Look what happened, and I'm through. In this young woman's, this maid life, she does two things. Number one, she makes a strong and eternal thesis statement. Now, anybody who's been to school just a little bit know that a thesis statement, really everything that you're saying in your report or in your whatever you're writing, it wraps around the thesis statement. If it's not brought out by the thesis statement, then this thesis statement or either the report is inaccurate. Look what she said. She said first to her mistress in verse 2. She said to her mistress, and the Syrian had gone out, the companies had brought away captive out of the land of Israel, a little maiden. And she waited on Naaman's wife. But that's actually what she was doing. But in verse 3, actually. And she said unto her mistress, would to God my Lord were with the prophet that is in Samaria. In other words, she's saying, I wish Naaman could get with Elisha who lives in Samaria. That's actually what she's saying. I wish that he could get with him. I wish she could get with him. He's in Samaria. Because he would recover him of his leprosy. Elisha would recover. He didn't say she can recover. He said she would. That's definite as an article. He would. Not that he might. Not that it's a possibility. But he would recover him from his leprosy. That's a thesis statement. And everything else that happened from the time she said so until if this happened is incidental, and it filled in all the blanks as to getting to this place of Naaman being recovered. His disobedience, his hard-headedness, his stubbornness, his pride. You got to understand that America is a great country. But America is arrogant, full of pride. She's self-centered. She can't be still. She must have her way in all things at all times. And the church has followed in good suit. Naaman, this little girl, maiden, would have never recommended the cure had Naaman been nasty to her in the household. Oh, man. Boy, this is where I was at church. I called on some help right now. She wouldn't have wanted him to be healed. She wouldn't have been calling my master. She would have been calling some other stuff, but not that. But because he was a man, he was a citizen, he was an honorable man, he knew how to talk to people. He had everybody in the military under him, and they looked like they loved to work for him. He was somebody, but he wasn't somebody above himself. And he was so much of somebody that God helped him. But he was a leper. And so her thesis statement is one of certitude, one of absolution. He will recover him off his leper. Just as sure as he gets there. This is time for somebody, we may not know everything, but this is time for somebody to know something. I don't know if I got my stimulus package or not. I can't even get into my bank. I don't know. There's a lot of things I don't know. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm eating for dinner today. We'll find something. There's a lot of things I don't know. But I do know that God is able. I do know that they that wait upon the Lord will renew their strength. I do know that God is the dispenser of every good gift and every perfect gift. And for the families, if you've had loved ones to transpire and go on to glory through the COVID-19, I want to tell you, if they're in the Lord, they're resting. They left us to be with him. Oh, I said to I don't want to die. That's an ignominious way. I don't want to die like that. I really don't. But if I do, I told her, don't cry too long, because I'll be resting. I won't be with you, but I won't be without you. When I see you again, I won't see you as my wife. I'll see you as another sister or another brother. We have to know we'll recover him of his leprosy. Let me say this, I didn't say it earlier. All that leprosy represented sin. That's all it is. And the wages of sin, we know, is death. Let me get through with this. Then the second part of what she wanted is found, before I read that, before I get to the second part, let me see if the thesis statement became true. Verse 14, then went he down and dipped himself 7 times in Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God. And his flesh came again, like unto the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. In her thesis statement, she knew what she was talking about. The script is wrote in between, but the conclusion is that what she promised, God brought it to pass. And he brought it to pass through the man of God. Some preacher got to say something these days. He just can't go run and hide and talk about the usual. He got to say something. He got to say something that transcends the conditions that are on the horizon of our culture. He got to say something. He got to really, really dig down and put God on display as being the sovereign king of the universe. He got to get out of the way. There's no time for preachers to be in the way of what they're preaching now. So in 14, we see the evidence of her assertive statement. And I've read that. You got to remember, as I go toward this close, she is talking about the preacher in Samaria. And she herself is in Assyria, up north, kind of northeast, toward the Mediterranean Sea. That's where she is. Probably in Damascus. Didn't say she was. Damascus is capital of Syria. Probably where she was. That's 715 and 2/10 miles. That's the distance that Naaman had to go in order to be recovered. Oh, my brother and my sister, you got to cover some ground if you want it. This is all of my philosophers and my people who, I call you my people, I'm saying who I love dearly, who always got a rationale and reasoning why you won't believe. You got to go some distance. You can't do it yourself. Naaman's sentence was to die. Coronavirus, it don't play with everybody. It doesn't play with anybody. And the contracting of it could lead to physical death. You might have to go a distance. Naaman went 715 miles and 2/10 in order, as they say in the church, I'm going to get my healing. Naaman got healed, but he didn't get it where he was. He didn't get it doing what he was doing. He got it free, as a free gift of grace. Let me close this text. The second thing we see, is that she desired that there be a strong vertical relationship. That there be a strong vertical relationship. His horizontal relationships were good, but he had no vertical relationship. His vertical relationships were not good. He had a relationship with his master. He had a relationship, obviously, with his wife and with the little maid who gave the instructions, go and see the prophet in Samaria, which was Elisha. And she had a relationship with, obviously, all people who worked for him, under him, around him. But he had no vertical relationship. And that's my last challenge today. Do you have a vertical relationship? Verse 17, oh man, is a masterpiece. When Naaman had been healed, he went back to Elisha. And he said to him, he said, I know I got to, when I get back to Rimmon, I got to assist my master, the king. He probably was older and his strength was dwindling. I got to assist him when he go into his temple to worship. But give me 2 burdens of dirt. Put it on mules. Give me pack mules. Pack me 2 mules with dirt. 2 of these mules. Put dirt from Israel on them. And when I go in, I'm not going to worship the gods of Syria. I'm going to worship the Lord God. Because if anybody can do anything for you, he's the one. Beloved, he's saying, pull off your shoes. Dirt is made for nothing but walking on. He's saying, pull off the shoes. Pull off the shoes of your philosophy. Pull off the shoes of your self-madeness. Pull off the shoes of your, I got your back. Pull off the shoes of, we got it. And put on the shoes of, I will trust in the Lord. That's what Naaman is saying now. I'm going to trust God. I got to go back to Syria, but I'm going to trust God. I'm going to trust the God of Israel. I want to close this story I heard about it was a wonderful story. I was riding one day, but I had forgotten about it. And there's a lady named, I believe her name is Miss Lee. Let me see. She's a wonderful lady. She's a writer, an author. And she helped me. I was reading. And I came up on some of her writing, whatever. And she retold a story. It's not mine, retold a story. True story. At the end of World War II, a lot of orphans, a lot of children were left without a parent because of the bombing and so forth. And this lady, she go on telling that story of how at the end of the war they were gathered up and put into orphanages. And while they was in the orphanage, they was cared for in a very decent way, as good as possible. But they noticed something, that children were filled with trauma. And when they would go to bed at night, they couldn't sleep. They would always wake up frantic and crying and, trouble, non-restful. And one of the workers in one of the orphanages sent a child to bed one night with some bread. Sent him to bed with frantic crying, trouble, non-peaceful child, but she sent him home. Sent him rather to bed to rest with some bread. To the amazement of all who worked in the orphanage, and it became the rule of the orphanage. Because when the child woke up the next morning, the child was peaceful. The child no longer exemplified frantic behavior. Because when she sent him to bed with the bread, she also gave him instruction. She said, now, you can, if you wake up, the bread that you have in your hand that you're clutching, don't eat that bread. Don't eat that. You just hold on to that bread. She said, but if you get hungry, wake up somebody. Because there's plenty more bread. Where that came from. Brothers and sisters, in this coronavirus pandemic, I want to tell you that there's plenty more bread. You can rest if you go to sleep with bread. Storms may come, clouds may hover, lightning, disappointment may be flashing in the distance. But if you got bread, you can rest. And when you get up, the next day, you still have bread. Old saints would say it this way, they weren't as cool as we are. They would stagger in their language and so forth. So I probably didn't preach over my time today, but here's what they would say. I'm going to say this. They would say things like, bread of heaven, bread of heaven, feed me till I want no more. It's a strange thing for wisdom such as came from that little girl to come from that. But it recovered the condition that Naaman was caught in. God bless you. Tell God, we bless you, we thank you, we praise you. Pray that this word go and grip the hearts. It's your gospel. You do as you please with it, and we'll be glorified. Thank you, God. We want to take this opportunity to again thank each of you for your investment of time into hearing this, I hope, timely truth on this morning. Continue to pray for us. And again, as I have always encouraged you, Galilee, not our friend, encouraging you that you would continue. Thank you for your support, your monetary. You've been very conscientious about that, and you have all of the necessary information. We need not give that. Have all of the necessary information as to where you can send your receipts, and we will receive them. Thank you for that so much. Also, let's continue to pray for our families. We have had some families who have lost loved ones through the COVID-19, and we're praying for you. We want you to know that we are praying for you and that God is able to sustain you. Again, pray that you enjoyed this message. God bless you.